August 24th, 1986. Official dedication of the Heritage Room at the Withee Public Library. Okay, I would like to welcome everyone today to our very official and special dedication of the Heritage Room. Before this time, we have dedicated the library in total. And some of the remarks that I made the last time probably follow through this time also. We are especially proud of this library, and you should be too, because it was funded, the interior was funded totally by your generous contributions, be it cash or be it labor or be it some memorabilia item that has been used in the library. And there are not very many places that can say that. Because in this day and age now, unless you get something from the state or something from the feds in funds, people don't want to do anything. So this is, Withee has a real feather in their cap for going ahead and doing this on their own. Now I read something that Flora Bartholomew, who was actually a local girl here, native daughter, I guess we'll have to call her, not native son, wrote the history of the Withee schools a few years ago when they were putting together a composite history. And one of the statements that she said, I really like, and I framed it and I have it hung in the Heritage Room. And it goes like this: a nation or community having no regard for its past will have little future worth remembering. We need authentic, tangible reminders of our virtues and predecessors to make us feel a part of the best in our heritage. They breathe life into past experience. If America, or we can say if Withee, forgets from where she came, if the people lose sight of what brought them along, if she listens to the deniers and mockers, then will begin the route of dissolution. And I think our city is not going to forget where they came, because you've already shown it in the very generous way that you have put our library together, and throughout this room and the Heritage Room particularly. That room contains many photos, and we have not only put, libraries contain a lot of books. This library has a lot of books, but we also have a lot of deeds that people have done. We have photos, we have just evidences all over of deeds, of things that we want to do to actually remember where we came from. Now, one of the, I have to tell this little story because when we were building, the library board had gotten together and tried to decide, we didn't have very much money, but we didn't want to build, and how we were going to go about doing this. So we decided, someone came up with a brainstorm, that we should maybe contact all of the alumni, because what we wanted to do was to put a history center in our library. And we sat down, and matter of fact, John Isaacs and Sandy helped to compose a letter that we could send out, and the letter is on the counter here too, in case there's anyone that has not seen it, and you'd like to see what we actually wrote to people, but just about everyone did receive one. And we sent it to all the alumni and to friends of the library, and to anyone else that we thought might be interested. When we sent the letter out, we received many responses from alumni. Some responded that they would like to donate cash, some that in memory of someone, some would like to donate perhaps something from 1928 that they had at school. And one of the letters that I received said, "I have an idea, and I'd like to talk to you about it." Well, this, of course, has made me curious. I didn't have the slightest idea of what, sometimes when people have ideas, normally if my husband says, "I have an idea," it means that we aren't going out to eat and there's an alternate plan of cleaning the barn or doing something else like that. So I was not too sure about what kind of an idea this was, but I'm always willing to listen to someone else's ideas. So a couple of months later, I received a letter from Mr. Koplitz, Dr. Eugene Koplitz, but we'll refer to him as Gene from now on. He's a native son, and I think we're on a kind of a, I mean, when you know someone, you could probably call it by a first name and feel comfortable doing it. So this was several months later, and then his sister, Myrtis Tiemann, called me and said, "Gene is here and he'd like to see you." And it was kind of on the spur of the moment, because he was in transit going somewhere else real quickly. And so I quickly got a hold of Joanne Gessel, the other library board member, and I said, "Can you meet me at the library? And the man that has the idea is here." So we met at the library or actually we met at the building. At the time it was not the library. It was strictly 2 rooms that had 2 separate doors. The paint was falling off the wall. There was the floor went like this in both rooms. And we walked in this room first of all and looked around briefly, and he said, "I'd like to see the other room." And so we walked in the other room, and the floors were going like this, and the paint is falling off the walls, and the bookcases are, well, they're still a little intact. And all of a sudden, he said, he was standing right by the doorway there. And he said, "You know, I can see it right now." He said, "Over in that corner, a nice fireplace and a nice mirror above it. Yeah, in the middle of the room there, I can see a chandelier hanging there, and a nice table underneath it. Probably a couch along that wall." And Joanne and I looked at each other and thought, that was the farthest thing from our mind. We'd never thought of, the floor was going like this, that this is where you probably could have a nice table and have something that really sounded nice. And the more that he talked about some of these things, and we thought, geez, that's really a great idea. But is he really for real? Because you always wonder, you hear these things, and television always, you have this person that comes in that has nice ideas, but that's sometimes as far as they go. Well, that wasn't as far as they went, because what you see is what his idea was. So sometimes when people have ideas, they actually follow through, and we're just very proud of that room, and very proud of the idea that you came up with. And if you have not seen that room yet, I know you will enjoy that room too. It's a room where you can take a book or a magazine, or if you just want to go sit. And the fireplace has a electric fireplace, so you can just feel nice and cozy. And there's actually heat comes out of it because there's a heat register right behind it. And there are 2 nice soft chairs, one on each side. And it's just a nice, pleasant room. And if you haven't been in there up to this point, well, you'll have to maybe take chances to see who gets the blue chairs in there, because they are very comfortable. Now, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about, this room is going to be dedicated actually to all of the people that have come before us that have found the value of education. And we'll get into that a little bit more, a little bit later, but I would like you to introduce you to the man that had the ideas, and this is Mr. Dr. Eugene Koplitz. Now, before I really get too far into this, I went and I got the old annual from 1944. I want to be sure, he really graduated and he was really here. So I opened it up, and sure enough, he was here, and he was in the band, the chorus, the forensics, class plays, operettas, vocal solo, boys quartet, clarinet quartet, the highlights, that's the newspaper, the blue and gold staff, this is the blue and gold staff, class president 3 times, and basketball. Now, supposedly he studied when he was here, but I don't know when he did that with all the things that he did. Before he came here, he went to Oakville School, which is out in that direction, out in Bear Country. And then he went to Withee High School, graduated in 1944. Then he went to Wisconsin State College at Eau Claire to get his Bachelor of Arts degree, and received his master's and his PhD at the University of Wisconsin in Madison in counseling psychology. Then he went to Harvard for his postdoctoral. He is a researcher, a consultant, a writer, a lecturer, and he teaches at the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. He also is was in the military. He was an instructor in ballistic meteorology in the Arterial School Command at, where'd you tell me that was?
Fort Sill.
Fort Sill. He did all this after he left here. So this just shows, just because you come from a small town, it doesn't mean that you have to think small. If you set your mind to doing something, you can do it. So I would like to ask him just to say a few words. Maybe, why he decided that Withee was a good place to have such a nice room like this. So, would you please welcome Dr.
A very short speech. So you can see when I go from this to this, you're halfway through. The purpose of this gathering here today is to dedicate the Heritage Room in honor of my parents and all the early pioneers who worked so hard to carve out a productive agricultural area here from cut-over timberland, and to those who established businesses here in the Withee and Owen community. It has been my belief, however, to those of us who have benefited from our parents' efforts in establishing schools, churches, and libraries, that we should repay them in some way by continuing the tradition and the spirit of this community. Through the wise use of the library, the upcoming generation should be enlightened so that they can meet the challenges of our complex world. So, small communities such as Withee will continue to exist and develop if people keep up in the frontiers of knowledge. Looking ahead and making wise decisions is always predicated on knowing the past. As I surveyed the area right above us, I thought, aha, a local museum. It has already been conceptualized on. There are others who have also thought about this. It's a large space right above us. It used to be the general room where we would spend when we didn't have classes. Remember? Okay. If you give your support to this particular idea, I think you could have a happening happen here, and you'd be very proud for the endeavor. I thought we could start out with one of the first contributions. I do have a contribution here in a little white box. When you start a museum, you have to have an item that is at least 50 years old. Well, I happened upon one of those particular items in a very sort of a strange way, in a sense. This item came into being on March 28, 1936. It occurred at a wedding. The wedding of Eleanor and Carl Ryber, who are among us today. And it happens to be an item of clothing. My girls, when they were 7 and 9, loved to go through their grandmother's attic. And for some reason, we're sort of a family who, I never threw anything away. And it's sort of a tradition with us to not throw things away, I guess. But what they found in the attic was this particular garment that was worn by Eleanor and Carl's maid of honor. It must have been the purple era then, and it was the purple period in my daughter's play period when they like to dress up, and play house. So what I have here, I don't have the mannequin to go with it yet, but I have here the dress that was worn at your wedding, you see. Oh, it's a lovely thing. It was purchased at Peavens, I think. Do you remember who Peavens were? Or it probably was, what was the other clothes? Picus. It was Picus, I think. Maybe it was at Picus. And another thing that I found out, which I should have checked on and retrieved. I remember it's either Mr. Peaven or Mr. Picus who had men's clothing as well as women's clothing, remember? Okay. And my father bought a new suit back there it was like in the 40s, right during World War II. And I remember very vividly, he said in his Jewish accent, "You see this here name? It's the Brooks Brothers. That's a good piece of merchandise. Brooks Brothers. Today, to get a Brooks Brothers suit, you have to have an appointment. And they're only in large cities and large boutiques." And the picture that you'll see in the other room with my mother in 1950 under the maple tree out in front of the house is a Brooks Brothers suit. And I suppose he paid $29.95 for it. I don't know. But in those days, maybe $39.95. But we were really kind of conservative in those days. We didn't go out. So maybe after we have finished this particular project here, I'd be very happy to assist in any way to get this area cleaned up. We have a lot of heritage here. You can bring in your whipple trees, huh? Don't you have a few of those around somewhere? Don't you remember when you cleared land and pulled out stumps? Any of you people around here? Picked up stones. How I hated that as a kid. Picking up stones. After you plant the corn, then you went out and picked up stones. And we kind of analyzed which ones could we get by with not picking up because they were not big enough. You know, the machine would get through them at the time. Things have changed tremendously in that period. So think about that. And I hope that in the future we'll keep this community spirit going. And we'll have a lively activity going on here. And small communities like this need not die. You can become the cottage community, where you have cottage industries. The smokestack industries are dead. Steel is gone. Big industry is gone. But if you're the new generation were to use the library and think in the area of technology and computers and things of this nature, we can have our industries right here in our cottages, in our homes. And we can live in lovely communities like this. We have a lot of green grass. And Canadian thistles yet? And bow thistles once in a while. And a lot of mosquitoes, 24,000 kinds maybe, or something like that. But we can take care of a lot of those situations. So that's all I have to say to you. It's been a delight being here. I'd like to introduce my wife to you right now. This is Peggy. And my daughter, Stephanie, from Minneapolis, and her husband, T. Michael. They drove down from Minneapolis. And I have another son who is in college and couldn't be with us today. And we had one other daughter who experienced a tragic death in 1979, which some of you people may know about. So that's all I have. I want to say one other thing. You have a tremendous person here. And listen, if you forget that idea of going upstairs here, don't give her too many things to do. She has ability, she has managerial skills, and she gets things done. The thing that amazed me most about this project was...
Hello, Withee Library.
The concept was on paper 1 year ago today when I came here. It was on a Saturday.
Talk. Marie.
Look what has happened.
Marie,
in
the
1
librarian.
year. You did it. A lot of people talk about it. In faculty meetings, we talk for a year and a half about something, and then maybe we might do something haphazardly. But this was accomplished, and that's what you should be complimented on.
Okay, what was your name?
You brought it to fruition.
What was your name?
And that's the important thing. I think I'll stop.
Just a minute. I'll let you talk to me.
Yes. 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 Okay. We're in the program, so I will relay your message right now to them. Okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you for calling. Okay, bye-bye. That was the village president. He was just relaying his message that his wife is in a parade at Loyal, and they won't be able to get back in time. And he was planning on being back for the program today. So that was Ben Mueller. Call just in time here. One of the things that I've been spending my evenings doing some strange things lately. But I took a box of all the old records that the library had, and I've been going through them. And I discovered that actually our library is older than what we originally thought it was. The first books were purchased in 1919, the 12th of December 1919. And actually we still have them. They are the top row of books, the real shiny ones with gold on. Those were the first ones, and they were purchased by W.C. Tufts. The ones right next to them were purchased by J.N. Christensen. And the titles of those are the Messages and Papers of the President and the President's Addresses in State Papers. Now, Christensen also purchased the Rough Riders. And another one that donated the first books that we had were Dr. C.S. Nielsen, and books like Ivanhoe, Textbook of Art Education, Children's First Reader, Black Beauty, Queen of the Air. So we did have a little variety. And then E.E. Nielsen. I'm not sure who, you probably know who that is. Okay, he donated 5 Little Peppers and How They Grew. Very popular little book. Now the rest of the books I discovered, or quite a few of the rest of the books, just at that point when they originally opened the library, were purchased from the Eau Claire Book and Stationery at the price of between 28 cents and $1.35 for hardcover books. So you can see how things have been inflated since that time. Now our pioneer forefathers saw the need to educate our future citizens. And this is why we have the librarians that we have had in the past that have maintained a library. Now, as most of you are aware, the library was started as a memorial to the veterans of World War I. Our first librarian was Clyde Nielsen in 1919. Now, I found out this is when the books started coming in, so I'm not sure exactly when the library opened because some of our records were destroyed along the way. But there were about 20 books a day that were checked out. Then after her was Harriet Tufts, and she had a large salary of $17.50 a month for having the library open. And at that time, they had also approved an order of ordering Woman's Home Companion 3 years for $5. You can't get very much, probably like $15 nowadays for 1 year. Helvina, 1936 to 40, Helvina Moylan. And then after her was Ruth Nielsen, 1940 to 41. And at that time, they added more bookcases, these large oak bookcases that we have in the back. And they had those built for the sum of $19.93 each. During that time, they also had a card party. Now, some of these things that I'm talking about, one of our board members in the past, Natalie Scherf, has been on the board for about between 20 and 25 years, and she was on the board during this time, so she might remember some of these things that actually happened better than what I read in the minutes. They had card parties to raise money for the library. The one card party they had, they took in $23. Of that, they spent $7.50 to buy 24 decks of playing cards. Then between 1941 and 44, Mrs. Theodora Elbert was the librarian. And again, she received $17.50 a month, and this included cleaning the library. It was during this time that I found out that the stores had been open in Withee on Saturday night. Now, I never knew stores were open on Saturday night. You're supposed to be getting ready for church, not out shopping. And they decided to close them on Saturday night and to open them on Friday instead. So the library closed Saturday night and opened on Friday to coincide with the stores. That was in 1944. After Mrs. Elbert, in 1944 to 1965, was Mrs. Carl Andreessen. That's Charlotte and Palma and Mother Andreessen, Norm, their mother. But she got the big sum of $20 a month. She got a raise along the way. But in 1952, she received $25. But the rent was $25 also. So you can see where your worth was. You know, your worth is worth as much as the building. Now, her husband would go up the night before and fire up so that the library was warm the next day when the patrons came in. And she prided herself in binding books well, rather than sending them to a binder. She did an excellent job of that. Card parties were still going on. In 1949, Charlotte Stewart was the chairman of one of them. 1966-67, Helen Segerstrom was the librarian. 1967 to 70, Scotch Copper. 1970 to 1972, Laura Paulson. And she helped Mrs. Elbert in 1942 actually to set up the card system. So by the time that she became a librarian, she knew pretty well what was actually happening in the library. I didn't ask you beforehand, but is there anything that you remember? This is just, I shouldn't do this. Anything that you particularly remember from the time that you were a librarian, of anything that happened during that time? I found out that Vi Jelling was on the board at the same time that you were the librarian. But it kept you very busy. 1972, Isabel Bakey was librarian. 1972 to 77, Verna Mackinnon. When Verna passed away, then in 1 year we had actually 3 librarians. We spent our time, I was on the local board by that time, and all we did was interview most of the year. Because would have a librarian for about 3 months, and then her husband would move to Milwaukee or move somewhere else. And in 1970, let's see, we had Pat Chekovich and then Gina Mueller, and in 1978 we have our present librarian, Marie Kostick. And she has had to carry the burden ever since. Now, would you like to say a few words, Marie? Let me bring your...
In thinking about what I was going to talk about today, we are honoring the heritage of our community and our people, and I decided to take hopefully a quick trip through the Withee community as I remember it from when I grew up here. I was born northwest of Perris, and I moved to town when I was 5 years old, and I've lived here ever since, except 5 years after we were married, which we spent in Milwaukee. And down in the corner where the present village hall is now was a neat little park. And this I kind of got through my grandparents. I remember a little bit of it being there, but not too much. But when they first came to Wisconsin from Iowa, they and several other people spent the night in this park and that place. And there was a building there in which we had our 4-H meetings and other social activities. And then a gas station was put up on that corner. And now it has been remodeled to become the village hall, which it has been for quite a few years now. And then coming down the street where Gene Merton's house is now was a 2-story building, which I remember as a Fosno Hotel. And then going on down the street, we come to what was the Come and See shop on the corner right over here, the Screen Building. And that is a building that was operated by the John Blanc Sr. and his wife for many years. And they had all little knickknacks, not knickknacks, but they had school supplies and groceries and ice cream. You could go in there and buy ice cream for 5 cents a cone. And we spent all our nickels and dimes there when we went to school. And then we come to the school, and I remember I was in kindergarten, I think, for about a week, and I come down with scarlet fever, and Dr. Johnson, he come to the house, and he tacked up one of these nice orange signs that says quarantine, and I spent the next month in quarantine, which my dad slipped the food through the door to us. And then from there, across the street where the present post office is, was a blacksmith shop. And this was owned by A.R. Martin. And he did shoeing of the horses and other various things. And Isabel Martin, his daughter, still lives in the house next door there on the corner. And then went from school here, our classes started at 9 o'clock in the morning. We got out at 4 in the afternoon. We had an hour off for lunch. And most of us that lived in town, we would scurry home and have 5 to 10 minute dinner and come back and play softball till 1 o'clock, and we had to come back to school. And I spent all of my 11 years in school here. The last year I went to the Owen School. That was the year that Owen Withee consolidated. And I graduated from there. We were the first graduating class from the Owen School after being consolidated. Then we go on down the street this to the north. We come to the where the drugstore and the cafe is right now. And that's where Harry Thorson used to have a store. It was Harry Thorson's Meat Market. So the Thorson family has been in the grocery business for some time. And then as we come upon our old library on the corner that we moved out of a year ago, and going down the street from the library to the west, we go past the bank. That street was lined with tall pine trees. And the bank, and then there was Emil Mercantile Store that was run by Emil Hansen and Catherine for as long as I wasn't, growing up. And then across the street, the Withee Park, that we flood every winter for an ice skating rink now. We had a round gazebo, and in there we used to have band concerts and pie socials. And the going social event of the summer when I was growing up was the free movies that the businessmen showed, and they showed it on the side of the feed mill, and the Erickson's feed mill, and you could see the people every Friday night come with their chairs, a cushion or a blanket to sit down and watch Gene Autry and Roy Rogers. And then down on the end of that, well, I shouldn't go quite that far, because where the Withee gas company has their oil gas tanks right now, there was a, what should I call it? Well, a stock here. The farmers and the people used to bring their cattle in every week and sell them from there. And then down a little bit further was the old depot, and we lived right across from there, and we got used to the trains coming through every night, and after a while you didn't notice them. And there was a 10 o'clock train, passenger train that would stop, and you could catch it and go to Chicago, Milwaukee, or so on. And then down on the very corner of the building was an old creamery. And this creamery, two young people, was kind of fascinating because it was empty, and we could go in there and look around and find the old papers that was left laying around and go through them. And then John and Ginny Isaacs bought the building, and he operated the John Deere store from there for many years. And it was in this building that the Withee Shopper's Guide originated. Ginny put it together with the help of 3 of us that would go down 2 nights a week and put the sheets together and staple them and fold them, and she would send them out. Then we don't want to forget our post office building, the old one. Dr. Johnson's office is right next door, and the steps to the south that go up there used to be the post office. And this is where Dorothy Zoba and Alpha Holmes worked for many years until the new one was built, which then they came over here for a while to work. And then Milton Crumb's drugstore. That was kind of a neat place because Milton's such a friendly, good guy. We called him Uncle Milty, and we could go in and sit down and have soda and ice cream. And he had some booths on the side where you could sit, and he would always say the old magazines and comic books, he always tore the covers off, but he would pile them in the back, and he would give us some every once in a while, which we thought was pretty great. And then last but not least, one thing that stuck in my mind was when the gypsies came to town. It seemed like for a few years they would come every summer for, maybe about a month. And they would set up their tents. And being young, we were told not to go by the gypsies because they kidnap little kids. So I think that this, but just probably a ploy to keep us away from them. And then I see here today that we have several of our senior citizens, Dr. Johnson and Natalie Scherf, and and there's Hal Christensen that drove was the mail carrier for many years. And as we gather together afterwards, I'm sure you'll recognize and can talk to a lot of these people. And I'm sure there is much that I've left unsaid about our village, but all in all, Withee is very rich in its heritage and should be very proud of what it is and what we've done. And I'd like to thank Dr. Eugene and his family for helping us restore some of this history and providing our heritage room.
Thank you, Marie. Very well said. Marie mentioned there are some people here that were on our board in the past, and I was just wondering if those people would just stand up. Yeah. Natalie and Vi Jelling, and who else do we have here that served some time? Now we have our present library board, which I would like to introduce to you, and we have just several of those here today. We're missing one. There's Jane Peterson. Want to stand up, Jane? Joanne Gessel. She's standing already. And Alfred Hattelstead. Ted Kafka is not. Now, every now and then someone comes along that has devoted a lot of time to working with libraries, and he isn't even a librarian. I have known Mr. Bob C. for 5 years, and I have enjoyed working with him on the Wisconsin Valley Library Board. Now, he has served on the Wisconsin Library and Marathon County Library Board since 1970. He has been on he's been the chairman of the Marathon County Planning Committee at the time of the merger between the city and the county libraries in 1974. He's presently the president of both the Marathon County Library Board and the Wisconsin Valley Library Board, which covers 10 counties. Mr. C. has been president of the Marathon County Library Board 3 different years, and the president of the Wisconsin Valley Library 2 different years. He's presently the president at this time, and 25 years ago he was the president, and we are having our 25th anniversary, so he became the president again, and does a good job of it. In 1974, he was named the State Trustee of the Year by the Wisconsin Library Association. At one time, he served as a member of the State Library Development and Legislative Committee for 2 years. And besides all that, I just happen to know that he enjoys hunting, the sport of curling, he likes to travel, and I found out that his favorite place to camp was beside the pool at Holiday Inn. Mr. C., would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Louise. I'd like to thank Flora Bartholomew and Dr. Koplitz and his wife for inviting us here today, my wife and myself. I'm happy to be here today, and I'd like to give you a little insight into the Wisconsin Valley Library Service, and I'll just dwell on that a little while. And Louise mentioned 10 counties, Adams, Langlade, Oneida, Lincoln, Portage, Wood, Forest, Marathon, and Taylor counties are in this. Oh, I forgot one, Clark. The Board of Trustees of this organization consists of 20 people, and they're appointed by your local county boards, or all of these 10 counties. And the 20 people then appointed elect an executive board of 7 people. And I want to mention that Louise said that I was president, but Louise, one of your own, happens to be vice president this year. And next year, she doesn't know it yet, but we're going to push to have her as president of this organization. Dr. Copeland said earlier that we shouldn't give her too much work because they've got a lot of work here for her to do here yet. I'm just going to give you a few of the things that we do with the Wisconsin Valley Library Service, the functions and purposes of them. And I don't think Louise said this, but we're headquartered at the American County Library in Wausau. We give public access to library service for all residents of the system area of which you are a part. Development of interlibrary loan and references, increased cooperation between libraries, and maximum use of library resources. And I think I won't dwell on this anymore. I'll just, we're here for a different reason today. When I was a young lad, 50 books would be delivered in a box to the local town near where I lived, and I would go 2 miles to town once a month to get books when I knew the exact time it would be delivered. They would allow me 2 to 4 books. That's all I could get. I tried to get all 50, but they wouldn't give them to me because someone else had to have books also. To this day, and the reason I'm pointing this out, to this day, 50 years later, and you notice I said approximately 50 years later, I won't give my age. They do not have a library. They have this same type thing where they have 50 books, 100 books, whatever. The reason I'm pointing this out, this town is no larger than the town of Withee. So what you people have done here is amazing, extraordinary. I'm just hoping that all the people that have contributed and done work, that the rest of the people in this community are thankful for this. What a beautiful library. It's just hard to imagine. So to all the people who donated time and money, I'm sure this community is thankful, as I said before. And to you, Dr. Koplitz, for your contributions and this day, I want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have another history. We're very history-minded here and heritage-minded, and we have another project that we have been working on for quite a number of years, and this is an oral history project. And this is where we sit down with someone, or else we just write to them and give them details and ask them to make a tape about their life and what they have done and things that they have, some of the things that, for instance, that Marie shared today. You don't have to be a president or an astronaut or anything like that, because every person has some story to tell. And so we're trying to get it down on tape. And for instance, this one is of Chief Justice Bruce, I can't even say it, Chief Justice Bruce Belfus. And the headlines in the Marshfield paper read, Justice Belfus, Withee native, dies at 71. So we do have his story actually down on tape that we made a couple of years ago. And this is what we're trying to do with a lot of people. And we have others, there are some of you here that we already have your story down on paper. We have, just to name a few, some are alive, some have since passed away. Arnold Vader, Arnold Rasmussen, Bert Miller, Natalie Scherf, Sabin Scherf, Catherine Hansen, William Haper, Martin Paulson, Alfred Frost, V. Keskamaki, Ed Frederick, Burley Grimes, Laura Olson, A.R. Martin, who's by his daughter Isabel, Wallace Wood, Harold Christensen, Dr. Johnson, and Gert Roland on St. John's Church. Now, if we have not contacted you yet and you would like to make a tape and tell us a little bit about what happened in your past, these things can be written, but unless they're told in an oral way, they're just things that are not in books about what has actually happened. And we would like to make a tape on you. So if you would just contact the library and say that you would like to make a tape, and we can set up a time to do that, we'd love to do that. So if you do not live real nearby and you'd like to make a tape and send us one, we'd appreciate that also. We have some pink sheets up here that have just some general information of things that we're looking for. And take one along, and at your own leisure, sometimes people prefer to make their tape. Let's see, are there any other village board members that are here? I saw Jim Jim Mertens in the back. Anyone else in the village board that is here? I'm glad you came to represent the board today. They were very positive in their thinking about getting the library going. And if it wasn't for them looking toward the future, I'm sure that we would not have purchased the building and not have the library today. Is there anyone else out here? We've heard from several people here that